The flashbulbs were blinding as Alaric stepped onto the velvet carpet. His hand rested arrogantly on the small of my back. He looked every bit the billionaire entrepreneur. His tailored tuxedo cost more than a mid-sized sedan, and the limited edition rose gold watch on his wrist shimmered under the gala lights. He leaned in, whispering, "Smile, Vivienne. Tonight, everyone knows we are the most powerful couple in this city." I didn't just smile. I beamed, but it wasn't because of the cameras. It was because I knew that in exactly 7 minutes, those cameras wouldn't be capturing his triumph. They would be capturing his ruin. As the federal agents moved through the crowd in their dark windbreakers, cutting through the sea of silk and diamonds, Alaric didn't even notice. He was too busy basking in the hollow glow of his own ego. I felt the cold weight of the flash drive in my clutch. It was the digital key that had already unlocked his prison cell. "You always wanted to be the center of attention, Alaric?" I whispered back as the first agent placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "I'm just making sure the spotlight never turns off. To the world, my life was a curated masterpiece." I was Vivienne, the founder of Vance Interiors. It was a high-end design firm that catered to the 1%. My husband, Alaric, was a charismatic importer of rare goods. Together, we were the gold standard of success. We lived in a limestone townhouse in the most exclusive zip code. Our social calendar was a list of elite galas, and our marriage was considered a rare relic of true partnership in a world of shallow connections. Alaric was the kind of man who didn't just walk into a room. He owned the air inside it. When he proposed to me 5 years ago, he did it on a yacht in the Mediterranean. He promised me that my ambition would never be a threat to him. "Build your empire, Vivienne," he had said, his eyes filled with what I thought was pride. "I'll be the foundation that holds it up." And for the first 3 years, he was. He was my biggest cheerleader. When I needed a business loan to expand my firm into the international market, he helped me navigate the paperwork. He was the one who suggested we integrate our logistics. "My import connections can help you bring in Italian marble and French fabrics at half the cost," he argued. It made sense. We were a team. I trusted him with my credit lines, my business accounts, and my heart. The first hint that the foundation was rotting came in the form of a system error. Last summer, I received a notification that my primary business credit card had reached its limit. This was impossible. My firm was highly profitable, and our overhead was strictly managed. When I asked Alaric about it, he didn't even flinch. "Oh, that's just a temporary hold, darling," he said, barely looking up from his tablet. "I used the line to secure a massive shipment of Swiss timepieces for a client. The transaction is just pending clearance. It'll be back to normal by Tuesday. Don't worry your beautiful head about the accounting." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to stay in the fairy tale. But the red flags began to pile up like unread mail. Alaric started taking business trips to Dubai and Singapore at a frantic pace. He became obsessively protective of his phone, taking calls in the bathroom with the shower running. When he was home, he was a ghost. Physically present but mentally calculating something I couldn't see. Then came the gift. On our 4th anniversary, he presented me with a stunning emerald necklace. It was breathtaking. But when I took it to my jeweler for a minor clasp adjustment, the man looked at me with a confused expression. "Mrs. Vance, this is a beautiful piece," he said, sliding the loop away. "But I'm curious. Why didn't Alaric have me source this?" "It's a high-quality replica." "A very expensive one, yes, but it's not an original Cartier." The blood drained from my face. My husband, a man who prided himself on authenticity, had given his wife a fake. The investigative designer in me, the woman who could spot a counterfeit stitch from 10 paces, snapped awake. I didn't confront him. Instead, I did what I do best. I started looking at the blueprints of our life. I waited until Alaric was on a flight to Hong Kong, and I began a deep dive into our shared digital accounts. What I found was a descent into a financial underworld. Alaric wasn't just importing rare goods. He was running a sophisticated smuggling racket. He was using my legitimate interior design company as a front to move luxury watches, high-end jewelry, and designer handbags into the country without paying a cent in customs duties. He had created a shell company called Giselle Imports. I recognized the name immediately. Giselle was a fashion influencer who had recently exploded onto the scene, always draped in the rarest luxury goods. I had seen her at events, often hovering near Alaric, but I had dismissed her as just another social climber. The digital trail was sickening. Alaric had been forging my signature on import manifests. He was using my business loans, the ones I thought were for my firm's expansion, to fund his black market inventory. Every time he bought me a gift, he was actually just skimming a piece of contraband from a shipment and giving it to me to keep me quiet, while the real profit went into a secret account he shared with Giselle. But the ultimate betrayal was a voice memo I found in his deleted folder. It was a recording of a conversation between him and Giselle, dated just 2 weeks prior. Vivienne is so obsessed with her aesthetic that she doesn't even notice the credit alerts anymore. Alaric's voice laughed, sounding sharper and crueler than I had ever heard it. She's literally paying for our retirement. Once this next shipment of Patek Philippe's clears customs under her name, we'll have enough to vanish. Let her deal with the tax authorities. She's the one on the paperwork, after all. And the baby? Giselle's voice asked, a playful lilt in her tone. She doesn't even know you're pregnant, Giselle. By the time she figures out her credit is destroyed, and the feds are at her door, we'll be on a beach in a country with no extradition. She served her purpose. I sat in my darkened office, the glow of the screen reflecting in my eyes. I didn't cry. The time for tears had passed when the jeweler told me my necklace was a fake. Now, it was time for precision. He thought I was a decorator. He thought I was someone who only cared about the surface of things. He forgot that to build a beautiful room, you have to understand the structure, the wiring, and the hidden flaws. I didn't call a divorce lawyer. Not yet. I called a contact I had made years ago through my high-end clients, Agent Vance, a specialist in customs and border protection. We met in a quiet, nondescript cafe on the outskirts of the city. I laid out the ledgers, the forged manifests, and the voice recordings. He's using your company to launder millions, Vivienne, Vance said, his face grim. If we move now, we can catch the shipment, but he'll probably find a way to pin it on you. He's been very careful to keep his name off the primary filings. I know, I said, leaning forward. That's why we aren't going to move yet. He has a luxury launch party scheduled in 10 days. He's invited the biggest collectors in the country. He's planning to move the entire Swiss shipment that night, off the books. I want you to wait. I want him to feel like he's at the absolute peak of his success. I want him to have the handcuffs slapped on him while he's holding a glass of champagne in front of every person whose respect he's ever craved. Vance looked at me with a newfound respect. And what about your company? If the feds raid the event, your brand takes the hit. My brand is built on my talent, not my husband's crimes, I replied. I've already started moving my assets into a new, independent entity. By the time the raid happens, Vance Interiors will be a shell. I'm going to let him sink with the ship he built out of my stolen dreams. The next 10 days were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I was the perfect, doting wife. I helped Alaric pick out his tuxedo for the gala. I listened to him brag about the big move he was making. I even thanked him for a new diamond bracelet that I knew was just another piece of glittering glass. I watched him and Giselle through a private investigator I had hired. I watched them toast to their new life in a penthouse he had bought with my stolen business loan. Every time he kissed me goodnight, I felt a surge of cold, electric energy. He thought he was the predator. He had no idea that I had already rewired the entire house, and the trap was about to spring. The night of the gala arrived. The ballroom was a sea of gold and black. Alaric was in his element, shaking hands with CEOs and collectors, whispering about exclusive opportunities available in the private lounge upstairs. You look beautiful, Vivienne, he said, squeezing my hand as we stood at the top of the grand staircase. Everything is finally coming together. You have no idea, Alaric, I said, smiling for the photographers. Tonight is going to be unforgettable. I checked my watch. 8:53 p.m. In 7 minutes, the customs task force would breach the private lounge, where Alaric had stashed the smuggled watches. In 8 minutes, his primary offshore accounts would be frozen due to the suspicious activity report I had filed with the Treasury. And in 9 minutes, Giselle would find that the escape jet Alaric had booked had been canceled by the primary cardholder, me. I watched as Alaric led a group of wealthy investors toward the elevator, his chest puffed out with the pride of a man who thought he had cheated the world. He didn't see the dark SUVs pulling up to the valet. He didn't see the silent, stern-faced men entering through the service doors. I took a slow sip of my vintage champagne and leaned against the velvet-covered railing. The fairy tale was over. The lights were about to go out, and for the first time in a year, I felt like the air in the room actually belonged to me. As the first shout echoed from the mezzanine, Alaric turned, his smile faltering. He looked at me, confusion flickering in his eyes. I just raised my glass in a silent toast. "Welcome to the real world, Alaric," I whispered. "It's not nearly as shiny as the one you stole." The crystal chandelier above the gala floor seemed to vibrate as the heavy boots of federal agents thundered across the marble. The music didn't stop. It was drowned out by the sudden, sharp commands of men who had spent months tracking the digital breadcrumbs I had left for them. Alaric was mid-sentence, boasting to a billionaire real estate mogul about a one-of-a-kind Patek Philippe, when a hand gripped his shoulder. Not the hand of a friend, but the iron grip of Agent Vance. "Alaric Vance? You're under arrest for conspiracy to smuggle, money laundering, and grand larceny." Vance's voice cut through the elite chatter like a guillotine. Alaric's face transformed in a way I will never forget. The arrogant high society mask melted away, leaving behind a terrified hollow boy. He looked around the room, his eyes frantic, searching for an exit, searching for a lie, searching for me. When his gaze finally landed on me, I was standing 10 feet away, calmly handing my champagne flute to a passing waiter. I didn't look shocked. I didn't look heartbroken. I looked like a woman who had just finished a very long day of work. "Vivienne, tell them," Alaric shouted as they pulled his arms behind his back. "Tell them there's been a mistake. It's the company. It's an administrative error." "Vivienne, do something." I walked toward him, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. The socialites who had just been laughing with him were now recoiling as if he were a leper. I stopped just inches from his face. "The only mistake, Alaric, was thinking that you could use my name to build a house of cards and not expect me to blow it down." I didn't just tell them, Alaric. I showed them every manifest, every forged signature, every wire transfer to Giselle. I gave it all to them. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Every camera that had been taking power couple photos was now recording his disgrace. As they let him out in handcuffs, the shame on his face was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. He had lived for the spotlight, and now, the spotlight was burning him alive. The following 48 hours were a surgical strike against his reality. While Alaric sat in a holding cell, I was in the boardroom with my legal team. Because I had cooperated fully and provided the evidence that Alaric had forged my signatures to bypass internal controls, the authorities moved to shield my personal assets from his criminal liabilities. I had spent the last week cleaning house, ensuring that every legitimate design contract was moved under a new, untainted entity, Vivienne Vance Global. By Monday morning, the news hit the headlines. Luxury icon Alaric Vance exposed in multi-million-dollar smuggling racket. The details were salacious. The black market watches, the designer handbags hidden in furniture shipments, and the influencer mistress, who was his partner in crime. Giselle didn't last long. The moment she realized the escape jet wasn't coming, and that Alaric's accounts were frozen, she tried to flee the country. She was apprehended at the airport with 3 smuggled Birkin bags and a suitcase full of undeclared jewelry. When the feds told her she was facing 20 years, she sang like a bird. She gave them every detail of Alaric's Giselle import scheme, confirming that he was the mastermind who had intended to leave me with the debt and the prison sentence. The most satisfying part, however, was the family fallout. Alaric's parents were old-world aristocrats who valued respectability above all else. They had always looked down on me for being a working woman, but now, their own son had become a public disgrace. I was sitting in my office when Alaric's father, a man who usually moved with the grace of a king, burst in. He looked broken. "Vivienne, you have to stop this. The family name is being dragged through the mud. We can pay off the debts. We can settle with the customs department. Just withdraw your testimony." "Say you were confused." I stood up, smoothing my silk blazer. "Arthur, your son didn't just drag your name through the mud. He tried to bury me in it. He planned to leave me in a prison cell while he lived in luxury with another woman. He didn't just steal my money. He stole my trust. I'm not withdrawing a single word. In fact, I'm adding more. I've just filed a civil suit for the total recovery of the business loans he diverted. I'm taking everything. The townhouse, the cars, the remaining inventory. Alaric won't have a penny left to his name when I'm done." "You're heartless," his mother whispered from the doorway. "No," I replied, my voice steady. I'm an accountant's daughter. I just know how to balance the books. And right now, the debt your son owes me is a debt he can never truly repay. They left. And for the first time in years, the Vance family name felt like a weight I had finally dropped. I didn't need their respectability. I had my own. The trial was a mere formality. With the mountain of evidence I had provided, including the GPS logs from his business trips and the recorded conversations with Giselle, there was no defense. Alaric tried to play the victim, claiming he was pressured by the market to maintain our lifestyle, but the judge wasn't buying it. Mr. Vance, the judge said, peering over his spectacles. You didn't smuggle goods to survive. You smuggled them to satisfy a bottomless greed. You exploited your wife's brilliance and used her pregnancy, something that should have been a sacred bond, as a shield for your cowardice. This court finds no reason for leniency. Alaric was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for smuggling, money laundering, and tax evasion. Because of the global compliance blacklist I had lobbied for, his name was flagged in every banking system in the world. Even if he ever got out, he would never be able to hold a credit card, open a business account, or work in the import industry again. He was effectively erased from the professional world. As for me, the rebirth was spectacular. I didn't hide from the scandal. I owned it. I gave one exclusive interview to Vogue Business, titled, The Interior of a Betrayal: How I Rebuilt My Empire from the Ruins of a Scam. I talked about the red flags, the fake jewelry, and the importance of financial independence for women. The response was overwhelming. Women from all walks of life, from CEOs to housewives, reached out. They realized that if someone as successful and observant as Vivienne Vance could be tricked, it could happen to anyone. My new firm, Vivienne Global, didn't just survive. It tripled in size. I became the go-to designer for women who wanted their homes to be sanctuaries of strength, not just style. A year later, I was walking through the airport on my way to a project in Milan. I passed a newsstand and saw a small blurb in a business journal about Alaric's failed appeal. He was languishing in a mid-level facility, reportedly working in the laundry room. The man who once refused to wear anything but Italian silk was now washing prison jumpsuits for cents an hour. I didn't feel a sting of pity. I didn't feel a rush of anger. I just felt finished. I boarded my flight, settling into my first-class seat. I looked at my wrist. I wasn't wearing the fake Cartier Alaric had given me. I was wearing a watch I had bought with my own clean, hard-earned money. It didn't just tell the time. It told the truth. To the girls and women watching this, never let the luxury someone else offers blind you to the value you already possess. If a man handles all the bills and tells you not to worry your beautiful little head about the finances, start worrying immediately. A partner who wants you to be oblivious is a partner who wants you to be vulnerable. Your career, your credit score, and your signature are your power. Guard them like the crown jewels. Don't be afraid to look under the rug, even if you're afraid of the dirt you might find. It is always better to face a cold truth than to live in a gold-plated lie. I am Vivienne. I am no longer a co-pilot to a criminal. I am the captain of my own life, and the view from the top has never been clearer. Now, I have to ask you, have you ever felt like you were paying for someone else's lifestyle while they were secretly planning to leave you with the bill? Have you ever noticed a red flag but stayed because you didn't want to break the fairy tale? What was the moment you realized your own worth was higher than any luxury brand? Tell me your story in the comments. Let's build a community where we protect each other's empires.